The Indiana Fever may have left San Francisco with a loss, but somehow the final score wasn't the biggest story of the night. It wasn't the missed opportunities. It wasn't the late game mistakes. And it wasn't even the coaching decisions that have fans debating nonstop across social media. The biggest story was Caitlin Clark, because while the Fever struggled to close out the game, Clark quietly continued doing what she has done her entire career, making history. Another game, another milestone, another record added to a resume that is growing at a pace the league has rarely seen before. And that's exactly why fans are asking a difficult question today. If Caitlin Clark continues to break records and elevate the spotlight around the franchise, why does it feel like the team around her still hasn't fully figured out how to maximize her impact? That's the conversation dominating basketball circles right now. So what do you think? Are the Fever doing enough to help their superstar succeed? Or are they leaving too much potential on the table? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
Caitlin Clark, second fastest player in the WNBA or NBA to reach 1,000 points, 500 assists. Caitlin Clark becomes the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 500 career assists.
Caitlin Clark became the fastest player in WNBA history to record 1,000 points and 500 assists. Number 2, Sue Bird at 82 games.
Before we talk about the loss, we need to talk about the history that was made. Because what Caitlin Clark accomplished against the Valkyries was nothing short of remarkable. In that game, Clark became the fastest player in WNBA history to reach both 1,000 career points and 500 career assists. Let that sink in. Not one of the fastest. The fastest. She reached a milestone in just 59 games. The previous record belonged to Hall of Fame point guard Sue Bird, who needed 82 games to get there. That's not just breaking a record. That's completely redefining the standard. And Clark wasn't finished. She also became the fastest player ever to record 500 career assists, adding yet another historic achievement to a career that already seems packed with them. Every time she steps onto the court, it feels like another piece of league history is being rewritten, which makes the next part of this story even more surprising. Because despite another record-breaking night from Clark, the Fever still found themselves searching for answers.
This was an embarrassing performance from Stephanie White and her entire staff. She put Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in an awful position.
If Caitlin Clark does not take over a game, they lose.
We got Veronica Burton at the top of the key with the ball in her hands. We have Kelsey Mitchell defending her. Monique Billings is defending the screener.
Monique Billings is a waste of $850,000.
Now, what needs to happen is Kelsey Mitchell needs to press up on the ball, go over the top of the ball screen, and force Kia Stokes to catch the ball in a short roll and become a playmaker. But Stephanie White made the decision, hey, we're going to switch Monique Billings on to Veronica Burton, and we're just going to let Veronica Burton play one-on-one.
Stephanie White had Caitlin Clark off ball more tonight than anything we've seen so far this season. Not only off ball, but Caitlin Clark was left all by herself.
Stephanie White is a joke. This defense was a joke. You let her play one-on-one. You allowed her to dribble 9 times with no help. You sit there and let people go one-on-one and take 7 and 8 to 9 dribbles one-on-one. What are we doing here?
And here's where the conversation gets really interesting. Because if you only glance to the box score, you might walk away thinking Caitlin Clark had a rough night. She shot just 3 of 12 from the field. She finished with 16 points. She committed a few costly turnovers. And predictably, that's where some critics immediately focus their attention. But basketball isn't played on a stat sheet. It's played in the flow of the game. When you actually watch every possession, a very different picture begins to emerge. You see the defensive attention she draws. You see multiple defenders collapsing whenever she touches the ball. You see the pressure she creates, the passing lanes she opens, and the opportunities she generates for everyone around her. The box score tells part of the story. The game itself tells the rest. And that's where the Real conversation begins.
This is why we say Caitlin Clark off ball doesn't work, because we don't have a coach that can make plays to get her open. Not even one screen.
She kind of looks disinterested. She looks like she doesn't want to be there. She didn't play well.
One of the biggest talking points among fans after the game wasn't Caitlin Clark's shooting numbers. It was how she was being used within the offense. Throughout several stretches of the game, Clark spent extended periods playing off the ball, watching possessions develop from the perimeter rather than directing them herself. And that's where frustration started to build. Because we've all seen what happens when the offense runs through Clark. The pace picks up, the floor opens up, transition opportunities increase. and the entire team becomes more dynamic. Against Golden State, however, there were moments when Indiana struggled to find that rhythm. The offense looked less fluid. Possessions became more predictable, and scoring opportunities were harder to create. As the game progressed, the Valkyries appeared to grow more comfortable defensively, while the Fever searched for answers. For many fans, that raised an important question. Is Indiana getting the most out of its most impactful playmaker?
Stephanie White's coaching is criminal. One possession game, 2 plays in a row, AB in the post equals fail. She will never get it until she's fired.
Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continued impacting the game in ways that don't always show up in the box score. Every time she stepped across half court, the defense reacted. Even on possessions where she never touched the basketball, defenders stayed locked onto her movements, often sending extra attention her way. That kind of gravity is rare, and it's one of the biggest reasons Clark remains one of the most influential players in the league. Her presence alone creates spacing. It opens driving lanes. It generates opportunities for teammates, and it forces opposing defenses to make difficult decisions on every possession. That's why so many Fever fans were left asking questions after the final buzzer. While Clark was adding another historic milestone to her career, many felt the offense never fully capitalized on the unique strengths she brings to the floor. Social media quickly filled with debates. Some fans argued that Indiana's offense looks most dangerous when Clark is actively orchestrating the action. Others questioned whether more ball screen and playmaking opportunities could have been created throughout the game. By the end of the night, the discussion had grown beyond a single loss. It became a larger conversation about team identity, offensive philosophy, and how best to maximize one of the league's most impactful stars. And after another record-setting performance, that debate only became louder.
To me, this was a glimpse into the future of the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark's career if she allows herself to be successfully bullied into completely accepting Stephanie White's third grade, forget the superstar, participation trophy offense and defense. What you're going to get is underperformances from Caitlin Clark.
But the records are only half the story, because what happened late in this game may have generated even more discussion than Caitlin Clark's historic milestones. As Clark continued adding to her legacy, frustration among Fever fans continued to grow, and much of that frustration was directed toward the team's overall execution and coaching decisions. Now, to be fair, no coach should be judged based on a single game. Every team has off nights. Every coach makes decisions that look different in hindsight. But when the same concerns continue appearing game after game, fans naturally start asking tougher questions. Against Golden State, those questions became impossible to ignore. The Fever never seemed to establish a consistent offensive rhythm. Possessions often felt disconnected. The ball movement lacked flow at key moments. And too frequently, Indiana struggled to create the easy scoring opportunities that successful offenses rely on. As the game slipped into its final stages, many fans weren't just reacting to the score anymore. They were debating a much bigger issue. Is Indiana putting its players in the best possible position to succeed? And after another frustrating loss, that conversation only grew louder.
We're letting Veronica Burton do whatever on defense. It feels insulting as a fan. They're literally standing around watching Caitlin while she's being swarmed. What the hell is going on?
Meanwhile, Golden State looked confident and composed throughout much of the night. Whenever Indiana appeared ready to build momentum, the Valkyries seemed to have an answer. One of the biggest factors was Veronica Burton, who consistently found ways to create offense and keep pressure on the Fever defense. Time and time again, Golden State capitalized on opportunities and forced Indiana into difficult situations on both ends of the floor. As the game progressed, questions about Indiana's defensive strategy began to grow louder. Fans and analysts pointed to repeated matchup issues, defensive rotations, and the team's ability to adjust when Golden State found success. Whether every criticism is justified or not, there's no denying that frustration is beginning to build among the fan base. And that's where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. On one side, you have Caitlin Clark continuing to make history at a pace rarely seen in professional basketball. On the other, you have a team still searching for consistency and answers in critical moments. That's why this conversation continues gaining momentum. Fans see the impact Clark has on every possession. They see the defensive attention she commands. They see how often opponents build entire game plans around stopping her. And naturally, they begin asking the same question. If Clark is capable of changing a game the moment she touches the ball, is Indiana doing everything possible to maximize that advantage? right now. That's the debate taking over the basketball world.
A lot of people are going to blame Caitlin Clark, but it's not Caitlin Clark's fault. If you're switching all the time, all of a sudden she's in a mismatch every time. And the reason they're doing it to Caitlin Clark isn't because she's this terrible defender. She's a much better defender than Kelsey Mitchell. It is because of it wears Caitlin Clark down. They understand what Caitlin Clark's impact is for the team, offensively speaking. So they want to attack her on the defensive end, not because she's a defensive liability, but because of what she brings offensively. The more she has to work on defense, the more physical they can be with her, the more she wears down, the less effective she is on offense, if they don't already have Stephanie White making Caitlin Clark completely ineffective.
The moment that sparked the biggest debate came in the closing seconds. With the game hanging in the balance and the Fever desperately needing a basket, many fans expected the final possession to run through Caitlin Clark. And honestly, it's easy to understand why. This is a player who has built her reputation on delivering in pressure situations. This is a player whose shooting range forces defenses to react the moment she crosses half court. This is a player who has already produced countless game-changing moments throughout her young career. But the final sequence didn't unfold the way many expected. The possession went in a different direction. The Fever came up empty, and almost immediately the conversation exploded across social media. Some fans believed Clark should have been the primary option. Others argued that basketball is a team game and that the right play isn't always the most obvious one. But regardless of where people stand, the reaction revealed something much bigger: trust. When a franchise player continues making history at an unprecedented pace, fans naturally expect the biggest moments to involve that player. And when they don't, questions are going to follow. That's why this discussion keeps gaining momentum. It's not because anyone can prove a hidden agenda or point to a single moment as the sole reason for a loss. It's because many fans feel there is still untapped potential in how Indiana utilizes its biggest star. Whether it's stretches where Clark spends extended time off the ball, questions about offensive spacing, or late-game decision-making, the perception among a large portion of the fan base continues to grow. And in today's sports world, perception often becomes part of the story. What's most remarkable, though, is that none of this has stopped Clark from producing, despite constant defensive pressure. Despite opponents building game plans specifically to slow her down, despite the scrutiny that follows her every performance, she continues making history. She continues breaking records. And she continues proving why she remains one of the most influential players in basketball. That's the real takeaway from this game. Yes, Indiana lost, but Caitlin Clark's rise didn't stop. The milestones keep coming. The records keep falling. And every achievement creates another fascinating question for the future. What happens if Indiana finds its ideal offensive rhythm? What happens if the team consistently unlocks every aspect of Clark's scoring, vision, and playmaking? What happens when one of the sport's most dynamic offensive talents reaches another level? Those are the questions fans are asking today. Because if Clark is already rewriting the record books while still evolving as a player, the possibilities ahead are incredibly exciting. And that's exactly why the rest of the league is paying attention.